This video is going to be my whole experience personally through this derealization. I've been sitting on this one for a while. I wrote out the script and I've been dragging my feet to actually make the video and put it out there, and I feel super self-conscious about it. So that's the sign that I really should do it. This is about the sensation of derealization or lack of stability, this depersonalization that happens as a result of prolonged deep self-inquiry. Because when you set out to do your own shadow work or healing journey, you're undoing all of that in order to step forward and walk in more authenticity in something that is true and your felt, known, lived experience as opposed to what you've been taught. And so that can bring about at a certain point this untethered feeling, and you might call it an ego death. It's going to be my whole experience personally through this derealization, how I work with it, and different tips for you. I want to begin the video with giving you acute tips. If this is something that you're actively experiencing, you've clicked on this video because you're needing answers and you don't know where to go, I have a few things that could help you right this minute. I'm going to start the video with those things. The first thing is it helps me to actually get on the ground. If you're familiar with the child's pose in yoga, to get in child's pose and just take deep breaths and stay there as long as you need to. And if you can do this outside, that's even better, but that can be a tall order. I understand. So just in your own comfort of your own home, reach out to an integration specialist, because this derealization, depersonalization, it can be triggered by plant medicines, but it doesn't have to be. It can just be through intense, deep inner work and deep spiritual experience, even deep meditations. So, an integration specialist that does plant medicine should be able to help you, even if it wasn't plant medicine induced. I didn't personally use one. The video will have more practical tips, but this is just something to do if you're needing it right this minute, if you need help right this minute. But as you watch, there will be more tips. The other thing I want to say is that this is not a replacement for therapy. It is just my personal experience of what this feels like to me. I'm going to go in detail about what this feels like. So I'm also going to have a timestamp in my description where you can skip me explaining what this feels like if that's triggering. I'll put a timestamp of where you can get to the solutions part. Don't take anything that I say as absolute truth, just something for you to feel and see, how does this feel and sit within me? Does this make me feel better? If it doesn't make you feel better, pretend you never saw it. Do something else. Go to a friend, talk to a friend, talk to your pets. Also, children really helped me. Being around children, my niece, was really healing for me because they have no sense of anything and they don't care that nothing makes sense. So I feel like being around kids could be really healing for you too. I'm going to go ahead and get to the part of the video where I describe what I mean and what it showed up and felt like for me. Feel free to skip ahead if that would be triggering for you. What I'm talking about, to get very concrete, is that feeling where reality doesn't feel real anymore. And for me, at first, that was kind of blissful and freeing, and then it very quickly turned on its head and everything got really dark. And I couldn't find my way out of it. Just as a reminder who I am, my name is Paloma, and I began my own DIY mental health journey that evolved into a spiritual awakening, just for a lack of a better term. But I basically have always been very skeptical and inquisitive and like to go into rabbit holes and research. But the topic that I'm most intrigued by is life's biggest questions and mysteries of who we are and why we're here. I've talked in many videos about my own journey of self-discovery, and it stems from me being eternally inquisitive about the wonders of life and also wanting to understand myself better. My life experience was that this was accompanied by spiritual phenomena like sleep paralysis, miracles that I witnessed, and signs from the universe. I would wake up and see writing on the wall, at the pits of my depression when I was drinking heavily. I have no idea where it came from, but I would be able to tell people at the bar, wherever I was, about their loved ones who have passed. Like, I was doing mediumship. So for me, these two things just were very intrinsically linked. And it got to the point where it would have been more delusional for me to not accept that there is some kind of metaphysical reality stacked upon what I'm looking at and seeing. it would have been more delusional for me to deny that just because of everything that had happened to me time and time and time again. That was like so very obvious. Yeah, that would be the only rational thing to accept, that there's something else going on here. There's something occult and esoteric happening simultaneously to this physical plane, and I can't just take everything at face value all the time. Actually, one of my very first entry points into, because I was atheist, like this was not something that I was really fully open to, and I didn't want to become like the chakra and the crystal lady. I didn't want to be that. Okay, I didn't choose this life. I became interested in near death experiences and learning about accounts of NDEs. I think that that was kind of like a scientific bridge because it felt like I was doing my own scientific research. But in those NDEs, I would hear very similar accounts from people that had the same kind of phenomenon occur, and what they were seeing, what they were sensing, what they came to understand, and the way that their lives changed as a result of that NDE. So this was kind of one of the first ways that I started to kind of dip into spirituality. That, and then also I just said, what the hell, I'm going to try it. A little bit of like, well, let me just consider it. Let me just see what would happen if I played with this idea, if I just entertained this thought. In August of 2023, I decided to do a mushroom ceremony with a group of strangers. I'm going to describe what I experienced during that ceremony. And actually, I have to be right back. All right. So I had I don't know what my dosage was because it was like in a big cauldron of tea. And I think I had maybe like 2 or 3 cups of this tea, and then a chocolate that had some amount of mushroom, but I didn't know it had mushroom. I thought it was just a regular chocolate. It doesn't, at this point, it doesn't matter. But the beginning of the journey, it was actually really pleasurable for me. For the first maybe 3 or 4 hours, I was like following my thoughts process and like playing with my thoughts and having a lot of fun, because everything I would follow like a series of a thought all the way to the end. And what it would come to was that there's no sense to anything. Nobody knows what they're doing, and do whatever you want and what makes you happy. And then that would just make me giggle. And yeah, I was like laughing like to myself of just like the arbitrariness of society's rules. And it was kind of odd because the woman next to me was in terror and was like crying and screaming, and then I'm right next to her like laughing my head off. And I couldn't help, like, it's not, I was seeing like subject matter experts or just people who've really convinced themselves that they understand something, but how do you know what you don't know? And so I found that really humorous. Also had like the typical visuals, like there was music playing, and so when I would close my eyes, I would see shapes like geometric flowers and swirls and things, and they would be different colors, and then they would like change to the beat of the music. So they're like dancing little shapes, and that was interesting. So if I looked at someone's face, like for example, there was a moment in time when I looked at the facilitator and she gave me a big smile, and like the ends of her smile like curled, like very cartoonish. Yeah, it was, visually like the spatial dimensions were weird. I remember laying down and I had a blanket on me, and I was just like kind of watching my breath, and I would see how the blanket would rise and fall with my breath, and it looked like it was alive and like a part of me, like my shirt. Like if I was tripping right now, my shirt would be like part of me. Yeah. I remember feeling the sensation of tissues and like how soft they are. I never paid attention to tissues this much. I have another story about the tissues, but I want to talk now about when the trip started to go bad. I think what triggered it was that there was a point when I look around and everyone had fallen asleep. And I mean everyone, including the facilitator, the co facilitator, all of the attendants. Everyone was asleep. Even the screaming lady was asleep. I was the only one who had been awake. And I started to feel like, oh, yeah, because I was still doing it. I was still doing the like mental looping of like, nothing matters, nothing matters. And to the point where it was like, okay, like you can stop now, like you got it. Like I started to think like, why can't I shut my mind off and sleep like everybody else? Like, why am I still insisting on following this mental thing around and round and round? I felt like I couldn't stop. And so I guess like comparison was a part of it, just because I saw how everybody was able to surrender and allow themselves to get tired and run their course, and how I wasn't running my course. It felt like the meaninglessness, it didn't feel funny anymore. It actually felt really terrifying, because even what was happening now was a part of it. Facilitators could tell something was up, that I was like kind of panicking, and facilitator came and was like, how do you feel? And I told her I feel really confused, because I didn't know how to explain. I have a lot of insights of just things that I was observing of how things materialize. So I was playing with those thoughts too. I remember the co-facilitator telling me something like, they've all done ayahuasca, but talking about all the other participants, they did the real thing. Basically saying like, what I'm experiencing is like nothing, is like everyone around me has done the real stuff. And that made me feel worse, because I was not able to get a handle on what you would consider the not the real stuff. And then she said, you'll understand one day. And that really triggered me, that you'll understand one day, because again, it made me feel like that outsider of something that everyone is understanding and I'm the only one who doesn't get it. And I was already feeling that way of like, everyone's asleep and I'm the only one who's not. Everyone is able to relax and I can't, you know? And so all of that just started to make me really uneasy, to the point where I went to the facilitator and I told her that I wanted to sober up and I wanted to go home, because she would come around every so often and say, do you want to go deeper? And if you said yes, you got more tea. And like after the third cup, I was like, I want to get off this ride. And then that's when she came around and gave me chocolate. Well, later on, the other facilitator told me that if I want to go home, don't eat the chocolate. And so then now I felt like trust issues, and it just added to the craziness of this night. But the night passed, and I did end up going home, and there is like an afterglow of feeling really grateful for reality being stable, feeling grateful for it to be alive. That is almost euphoric. Like I remember watching the sun rise, and it was like the one of the most beautiful sensations I'd had. It kind of felt a little bit like the movie Inception, where Leonardo is in a dream within a dream, and you don't even really know what's real anymore, or what layer of dream you're in. You feel like you can't get help, because whoever you go and talk to and explain, they can only understand you from within that scope of the dream that you're in. In the movie, Leonardo is explaining to some man what happened with his wife and what's happened with the how he's trying to get back to his kids and stuff. And the man, is listening to him, but he can't really help him, because he's part of whatever dream he's having at that time. So he can only help from that point of view. You lose the ability to feel like you can go to anybody for help, because they can only mirror you. They can't give you truth. And then it's like the people who are in this dream, they're content, because they don't see life in this layer. They're taking everything at face value. They're not tormented with this idea of what's real and what's not. They're just off to work I go, blah blah blah, They don't really question it or have any desire to escape it. Another movie that could kind of explain what I was feeling would be The Truman Show, and how it just feels like reality is kind of very manufactured, because everything did seem arbitrary, and I'll talk about those insights. So to be really clear, here was my dilemma. What I was seeing was that we make our choices, our life decisions about everything we do, who we are, where we go, where we live, based off of the environment and the stimulus that we come across. You think that you made the choice, but really your environment has been preparing you to make that choice all along. You've had these subtle nudges that have told you where to go and who to be. But the thing is that the stimulus that you're coming across, the only reason that you're coming across it is because of your own personal belief system. It's like this what came first, the chicken or the egg kind of question that was driving me mad. If you are the one that is creating the stimulus and the stimulus is driving your choices, you can kind of see how you may be keeping yourself stuck in a loop. And so I'm becoming aware and seeing karmic loops, but I don't know how to stop it, because anything that's going to come my way is going to be a part of the dream still. And that can feel like a prison, and it's pretty maddening. And that is, I think what I'm understanding is the law of karma. It feels like being kind of awake in hell. And I made a video about this, but I decided to re-record, and I wanted to add more context and more coping mechanisms because I did want to be sensitive to the fact that somebody could be living through this now. And there's a certain level of care that I feel like I missed the first time around. So I have this, what I would say was a bad trip, and then life goes on. And I didn't know if it was just like a fluke, if it had to do with the facilitation, or if it was just kind of a one time thing. But what ended up happening was that years pass and I take an astrology course, and I get a reading from this astrologer who triggered these sensations in me again, but this time completely sober. What was interesting about it was that it was nonstop. It wasn't like you do shrooms and then the shrooms wear off and then you're kind of back. That was weird. But anyway, back to life. No, because I was not on plant medicines and I was sober, it went on for like, I want to say a month, maybe 2 months of nonstop derealization. It was really intense. And it was like any time that I stepped out of the present moment or that I stepped into conditioned patterns of living, just doing something based out of routine or doing things that like having breakfast at a certain time because that's what's expected. Anytime that I try to do anything like that, I would get sick. And it reminded me of ayahuasca where your body purges. The only thing that I could do was just stay in the present moment and then honor what felt like I needed to do at that moment, which is really weird because it would have me, I would wake up at like 5 a.m. and typically if I wake up at 5 and I don't start work till 8:30, I would go back to bed and then wake up at 7:30 and get 2 more hours of sleep, but I couldn't do that. My body was up, and so I had to get up, and next thing I know, it's 5 a.m. and I'm doing Reiki on myself. And or another example was like it's midnight and I have to go on a walk for some reason. Just following instead of my normal cycle or what society would tell me or what would make logical sense, what felt like I was honoring the moment. And that's the only thing that I could do. Otherwise, I would feel sick. The good thing is that I had been a student of Eckhart Tolle's, and so he talks a whole lot about present moment awareness, of active meditation. That's why I really preach it. And so I do recommend that for you if this is something that you experience periodically or if you're experiencing right now. And it's basically just shutting the thoughts off and just focusing on the task at hand 100%. It was really interesting because it was really dark and also extremely beautiful. It was the best and the worst of times. And in some moments, I would have intense, beautiful experiences of like deep knowing. And then other times, I would be just like utterly terrified. And it was just one extreme to the other. I was able to experience unconditional love, loving without attachment very clearly. And I don't want to glamorize this. I don't want to encourage this through drug use, or it's not glamorous and it's not necessary, to get ahead or to grow. I don't think it is. I feel like it's okay to go slow, go measured, and there's a lot of other ways that you can experience what I'm talking about without feeling like you're losing your sanity. And it's just about acclimation and making sure that your nervous system is on board and that you are going at a comfortable pace, which is actually the more loving way to go about it. I just didn't even really know that what I was doing was so intense because it wasn't the big ayahuasca, like the lady said. It was just like shrooms. Everybody does shrooms. I didn't know that it was going to affect me to the level that it did. And I also didn't know that the reading with the astrologer was going to trigger it again. What's really interesting is that what the astrologer told me is nothing that I hadn't been told before. I had had many readings and I had been told what he told me before, and I agreed with it. In fact, I think I was the one who like presented the idea, but I can't explain what it is. It just really hit me deeply that particular time. What's really hard about this is that nothing can comfort you. A lot of times, nothing can comfort you because you can't go back to your escape habits of maybe like binge watching Netflix or something because you know that you're escaping. You also can't just stop living, but the pain is it's so uncomfortable and so vivid and real that it's hard to live with or to ignore, to sweep under the rug. How do you feel normal again? So I'm going to talk to you about what I did in this stage because I didn't know if this was just how I was going to feel for the rest of my life. And sometimes I still do. First thing that I would suggest is that you find an integration coach. I didn't get an integration coach, but I did travel. I met with this woman who had done over 100 ayahuasca ceremonies. And I figured I could talk to her and she would understand. But for me personally, every time I tried to reach out to someone and explain what I was feeling, I couldn't. Like they wouldn't understand me. I knew I was like, this lady's gonna know. Like this is the person to go to. And when I explained to her what I was experiencing, she was like, huh, no, I never really thought of it like that. I tried to talk to even to the astrologer, and he told me something similar happened, and what helped him was creating poetry. So creating art is something else that you can do, and turning what you're feeling into some kind of expression and art form. There was someone else that I had talked to who told me that he had done an acid trip when he was like 12, and he told me some things that he still experiences to this day. And so I thought of him when this was happening, and I reached out and I said, "Hey, would you be open to meeting up?" And it just never came to fruition. And I took that again as a sign of like, okay, Paloma, you need to find your own way. Like no one at this point, no one is going to be able to help you through. This is something that in your own reasoning, you have to find a way to be okay with what's happening. And you might want to rely on others to help you get there, but this is not the path that's for you. You're meant to do this alone. That's the conclusion that I came to just because everywhere I turned, I felt like it was blocked for one reason or the other. Sometimes I was the reason that it was blocked. But again, it's because I didn't know I was spiraling pretty badly. So I did have one close friend that, although she couldn't specifically understand what I was going through, she could tell that this was really distressing for me. And so she would check on me, and she's like, "Is it okay with you if I just check on you throughout the week?" And I talk to her every Sunday. And that was a huge help for me because there's something about feeling love for another person that is, it pierces through any fear. It's just like, that is truth. You can trust love. And so there's just certain people that I knew that I love them. And that's the only thing that I knew. In all the chaotic questioning and spiraling, I just knew that I love this person. And, my pets were a huge source of comfort for me at this time. And yeah, it was really difficult for me at that time to put into words what I was experiencing because I was like in the middle of the storm. I didn't have this clarity to explain. Words, I just knew things were off and they were weird. I do also want to say that the active meditation in and of itself wasn't enough to get me out of the state, but it really helped tremendously. Well, you just do everything to the best of your ability and with all of your focus, and you're not thinking ahead or you're not thinking about the past. And that is super grounding, but it's still like I was doing that and still I felt the existential dread at the same time. So you're not doing anything wrong if you're doing that and you still feel like panicked. It's okay. I do have this one memory of being younger, and I was in high school and being out at night on a tennis court with my friends, and we were talking about life's mysteries, aliens and sleep paralysis, and just like looking up at the sky. The reason this was significant was because that night that I told you guys about, that it was like midnight and I decided to go on a walk. Well, right across the street from me is a park with a tennis court. I go to the tennis court and I have this memory come of when I was in high school, being on the tennis court with my friends and talking about the mysteries of life. And the reason that this helped me was because I remembered that there was a moment in time when I could marvel at life's questions, and it was just innocent wonder. It was like awe, but there was no terror with it. It was like, this world is far out, man. It was an innocent, naive, childlike wonder. And it was helpful for me because there's nothing different now. I don't have the answers now. I didn't have the answers then. But the difference is the panic that I decide that I want to associate with not knowing, as opposed to that there was a moment in time when I could wonder and not feel dread about it. So it was like somehow being on the tennis court at night helped tether me to that memory, which kind of helped me realize that there was another perspective that I could take about this whole situation. and that was helpful and healing. And so maybe you have something like that too, a time when you didn't feel or associate panic, or you had a great discussion with someone, or maybe it's just something that is comforting and it has nothing to do with life's questions, but it's just, this reminds me of simpler times. I would recommend seeing if you can infuse a little bit of that, because what you're trying to do is wherever you put your focus, you're growing within you. So if you're looking at the void is looking back, and your state is going to magnify. So you're trying to find an in, less fear, more trust, more faith, more easygoing. You have to do it very incrementally, because it's not realistic to just tell yourself, like, okay, from this moment on, I mean, you can try. I don't want to be the one who says it's not possible, and then now I'm making that a reality for you. Maybe, you know? But for me, what I feel like helps is to make incremental changes, to look for a little bit of a lighter perspective, then a little bit of a lighter perspective, a little bit of a lighter perspective, until before you know it, you're actually feeling pretty good. The other thing that helped me was actually India Arie's music. So really any of her songs, I felt like she was telling me what to do. Like she was like giving me the steps. Ayahuasca ceremonial music, you can look up playlists for that. They're really helpful too, because they tend to help. If you're listening to the lyrics, they kind of guide you through what to do, or other perspectives to take. Recently, I was watching the Spotless Mind, something Spotless Mind with Jim Carrey. It was kind of a trippy movie, and at the end of the movie, I felt that existential dread again, exactly as it came up during the Shroom ceremony, exactly as it came up, those dark night of the soul moments. And I did just that. I got into child's pose and took breaths, and I told myself, it's okay to feel this way. Everything changes. This too shall pass. Sat with the sensation. It was time for bed anyway, so I just went into, my bedroom, got in bed, and I started reading. And then it was like gradually the sensation just got less and less and less until it completely dissipated. And I don't know if it's gonna what's gonna trigger it again, if it will ever come back, but I feel like I know that it's not going to be all encompassing and endless. Everything ends. That's the one guarantee, is that what is now will change. I'm starting to build more faith that that will be the case again and again and again. And as many times as I need to feel that, I'm okay with feeling that. So, in a way, it does feel like it's kind of lessening its hold on me, because before I would have been completely paralyzed by that. It wouldn't have gradually diminished. It just would have taken over nonstop like it did for months. So to me, that's a sign that it is losing its hold on me, this fear. It's also, leveraging the states when you do feel clear and you're not plagued by so much doubt, to remind yourself how important perspective is and gratitude, and just keep as much as you can intentionally choosing light and joy and happiness. Like choose it, like defiantly choose it, especially in the moments that you're clear and you can, because it can be hard to do that, because you feel almost like, this is how it feels like you're denying reality. If I were to try to tell myself, just choose to be happy, like if I told myself that in that state when I'm feeling the panic, it would feel like, but that's not real. That's not true. Why I think it's more helpful to inch your way into slightly feeling better, because it would feel like a betrayal or a self betrayal to what you're experiencing, or almost like you're abandoning truth to just go and be happy. From what I understand, whatever you focus on, you get more of. And so it's not that you're bypassing, it's just that you've seen what's down this road, and now you're going to choose something different. And it's just happens to be lighter because that's more preferable. And that's all that life is choosing what is more preferable. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read to you the Shroom insights that I wrote down. This is a bit unrelated, I guess, but this is what my mind told me, or what I saw. So first, I have a story about this pen. So I had a bag with me, and in the bag, I had like lip gloss and lotion and my pen and my notebook, and I don't even know what else, gum, I don't know, whatever I had in my purse. And there was like a moment that I had an insight that I wanted to write down. And so I reach in my bag and I'm looking for the pen, and I'm trying to hurry and find it because I don't want the insight to dissolve or to forget what I'm thinking. In kind of a rushed, hurried state looking for this pen, and like the more that I'm swirling in the bag, the more that I'm not feeling it in there. Oh, did I bring a pen? And then I had this thought, and this is during my shroom ceremony, if I didn't make that clear. I had this thought that came, yes, you grabbed a pen and it's in your purse. And the moment that I had reassured to myself that, yes, I had a pen and it was in here, the pen was in my hand instantly. It was that like switch of state of panicked shuffling to that assured knowing of, yep, it's in here. You remember you put it in here. That made the pen materialize in my hand. Then I went to my notebook to write down my insight, and the pen wasn't working. There was no ink coming out because, again, I had switched back to the hurried panic state because it's like, oh, got the pen, write it down. And in that switching back, I was met again with resistance of the pen not having ink. And then I was able to see what was happening, and I told myself, it's okay, just calm down. It's going to be okay. You're going to be able to write it down. And as soon as I did that, the pen started working. And so it was showing me a real life example of life when we meet life with resistance, and then what happens when we allow things to be, and the way that reality kind of works with you when you soften resistance. And I was seeing it in this case through this metaphor of the pen. What's funny is that I went back later to see what I wrote. What was I in such a panic to write? And I just wrote, why do you write in the lines across the page? And that was like the deep thing that I had to get the pen for, that felt like the most important thing in that moment. The other story was the story with the tissues. So I had kind of like a runny nose. There was a point where I needed a tissue and I didn't have a tissue. And this became kind of like a subtle thought throughout the trip of like, oh, I need a tissue. My nose is running. Oh, my nose is still running. I need a tissue. Well, the trip is going and time's passing and things are changing and I'm freaking out about this. And sometimes I'm calm and sometimes I'm giggling and sometimes I'm at the bathroom. There was a point where I come back and there's tissues everywhere. There's like 3 tissues in my purse. There's like one on my yoga mat. There's one on my pillow. Now I have a ton of tissues. And I realized that because I had subtly been thinking about how I didn't have tissues, I think someone gave me, like, I don't know, somehow without my notice, I was bombarded with tissues. And again, that was another metaphor, another way to show me what we focus on, you end up getting. It's a subtle thing, and you find a way to move to that what you're always thinking about. So be careful what you're always thinking about. Okay, I said currency. We pay money and invest time into things as a price of admission to be in a certain place with certain people doing a certain thing. The amount you're willing to give is indicative to the importance and priority. That one's kind of obvious. When we have rules to follow, procedures to follow, it's often arbitrary. We keep those patterns and routines, but we don't have to. This also goes into the roles that we play, the choices we make. We follow the norms and constructs. You control or create the reality that you want. Everyone is just winging it. Those who have fully convinced themselves are winning in life are, so convince yourself. Life feels like Meow Wolf product placement. You see how the world is set up and tailored to grab your attention with product branding to make you feel special, unique, etc. Labels that are meaningless or whimsical, 20% more, etc. I start to see subtle manipulation, which makes up how we see ourselves and the choices we make. The branding of things tells us you have to have me if you're blank, if you're spiritual, if you're athletic. I saw the role of the spiritual person who finds comfort and belief in objects like crystals, and people who speak about subjects as matter experts. They truly believe it, and their environment reinforces that belief. Even during conversation, I saw when blank, I'm not going to say her name, when me and this person were talking, we would impose a belief and wait for the other person to validate it while we speak. Nodding, smiling, agreeing, all subtle clues that we are accepting their reality. We feel uneasy when questioned because an ego reality is fickle and personal. So then you start to wonder about truth and what truly matters and motivation to do anything. My cats always came up for me because of my great love for them and feeling obligation to provide for them because they are completely dependent upon me. You think of things that you don't allow yourself to do because of obligation, time, or money. We are all playing a role in a big play, holding on to an egoic self-image. Getting too involved in this reality creates suffering, meaning you still play the game, but you aren't totally lost in your identity of it. Underneath it all, you realize your inner consciousness that supersedes all facades. When you can live life without judging or resisting, that would be in flow. I see my role with blank, another person, Even after the trip is trippy, seeing myself in bird's eye as a woman trying to find meaning and sense of this strange world, being comforted about the trip and making judgments. In reality, it wasn't good or bad, it just happened, it just was. We create our reality, so the simulation our brain gives us in dreams and trips is what we subconsciously want. For example, my trip, I see myself as a seeker of truth, wanting to understand the pattern of the world. My trip is composed of lots of these themes. I observe the teacher, the student, and the process. I see the play of egoic expert and confused scholar. Someone else may not be interested in these topics and are instead consumed by perhaps self image, and so their trip may be totally different. They see themes about body positivity, image, function, bodily function, self love. In meditation and Eckhart's mindful awareness, a way to gain insights that psychedelics provide without entering another dimension? I don't think that's true. During a bad trip, remember your consciousness perceived it, so you can say to yourself, I love you, you are a part of me, you are welcome here. Be willing to experience anxiety, fear, and negative thought. Yeah, that's good. Okay, I want to close by saying that this is a process. It's going to hit and miss, and it's gradual. It's just a practice that you keep coming back to. I think for me, it's about realizing that even if things are a puppet show, there's a middle way, and where I'm not like totally lost and unaware, but I'm also not so detached that I'm just choosing not to participate or to find joy in things. It's middle perspective where I can hold multiple things as true and guide my life by that. And at a certain point, it's just trust, learning to trust myself and my choices. And even if you can see how fleeting and impermanent everything is, that you still love fully and enjoy fully, not in spite of it, but because of it, because you know that everything can be gone and will be gone. You choose to enjoy whatever is happening right now fully, for that very reason, and not trying to rush different phases of your life. Also, just observing nature and realizing that there's some sort of organizing principle that is organizing nature, and trusting that that same force is organizing you too, and then learning to relax into that instead of trying to effort and know everything. You try to micromanage nature. Just realize that everything is in divine time, in God's plan, and really feel that as much as you can. There are things like archetypes that help. I will make another video on that, on like how crystals can help, Reiki can help. I feel like there's a conscious way to use spiritual tools. There's a conscious way to do everything. There's a higher vibrational way, or more healthy or more level-headed way to approach everything, from using spiritual tools, from learning, from dating, from working, from going to school. There's the same action that you can do in different ways, and I can make videos about all of these different things, and I will. Hopefully this channel can also be a resource too for you that can help you stay grounded and looking for how you want to interact with the world, and choosing that consciously as opposed to kind of being at the mercy of what comes your way. That's all I have for you. I wish you so much love. I'm not worried about you, not for a second, because you are in divine time. But I am here for you if you need me, and I will be here with more content for you guys. And let me know if there's anything that I can do to support you in the meantime. Another reason too why I feel like plant medicine is kind of unnecessary is that if you're really living consciously and paying attention, all of life is one big ceremony. If you're paying attention, everything is sacred and ceremonial, and you can find meaning, and you can grow, and you can love more, and you can expand just by paying attention to what's happening to you and by being aware. Breath work helps. That's Kriya Yoga is another path. There's so many paths that lead home that I don't think that you need to torment yourself. If plant medicine feels like it's a scary thing. Now, some people it's not, and it's like exciting, and that's what life is calling you to do. And you're 100% sure, and you're like, I don't know why you're trying to make it sound scary. I don't want to influence you either way, but I do want to be responsible in the sense that I don't want to make this sound glamorous or like it's the only path or that I know something that you don't know, because that was what I was being told. And I don't. No one does. That's the truth of it. That's the beauty of it. Okay. Now I will go.